That's it right here on my desk. Receipts and proof, all just all kinds of crap. Anyway, the reason for this live this evening, just to share some information. My mom died April 6th, 2022. From December of 21 until she died, she was home maybe 2 or 3 days total. She went from hospital to nursing facility. And back. Even various hospitals, different ones. We took her to try to get a different set of eyes on mom to figure out what the heck was going on. So through all of it though, the doctors, the nurses, physical therapy, occupational therapy, they all kept telling me that she's just not trying, that she's refusing to do this, to do that, to get up, to blah, blah, blah. At the same time, mom's telling me a different story. Mom's telling me that she wants to get up and she wants to walk. She wants to get stronger, but they're just not coming in and getting her up, and doing this stuff. So I started to actually question mom's lucidity. And for the last couple months of her life, I kept telling people this, when I say people, I mean doctors and nurses, this isn't mom. If you knew mom, you would know that this isn't her. She would much rather be able to do things for herself than to have to depend on somebody to come in and do those things for her. So as time went on, she had quit eating. She just kept saying that she wasn't hungry and that her stomach was sick. And she kept like she was going to throw up, but nothing really came out because she wasn't eating anything. She started hallucinating. She knew who I was through all of it. She didn't always know where she was. When she saw my brother on April 6th, she didn't know who he was at first. Anyway, now she had a pacemaker. She was under the care of a cardiologist. She often would have bouts of her CHF, congestive heart failure, would I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, that it would. Marie's ready to buy her first home. What's up with all the yawning? When you buy with Rocket Homes and finance with Rocket Mortgage, you get up to $10,000 cash toward closing for Rocket Mortgage. Anyway, and through all that, and through me trying to stress that this isn't mom, there's something wrong with her. There's something going on. And they just kept saying and charting it all as behavioral. And that's not mom. Mom doesn't have behavioral issues. So, after her cardiologist, and all the other doctors that she was seeing or that came in to see her when she was in the hospital, they kept telling us that she can get better. She just has to try. She's not trying. She's not doing what we're telling her to do. Now, mind you, on a couple of different occasions of being discharged to come home, she did have home health nurses that were coming in. And she always tried when they came in, because I was always there. on the occasions that I was there when she was in the hospital and when PT would come by, she was excited to get up and move. And, even if they had to help her and she could only take a couple steps, that was progress. And she was able to get up and move somewhat, at least a little bit. So, the last time she was sent out to the hospital from a nursing home. Anyway, the last time that she was sent out, she was sent straight to the ICU. They didn't even take her to the ER. They admitted her straight to ICU. Um, when she arrived, um, you could tell that by the condition that she was in, you could tell that they weren't giving her the proper care. Of course, anyone can say when it's your mother, oh, they're not good enough for my mom. They're not treating her as good as she needs to be. I know everybody can say that. Um, but at the same time, like I said, I keep saying that she's not getting any better. She's getting worse. And what do we need to do? Who does she need to see to find out why these hallucinations are happening? Why that? I mean, it was almost like she was having early signs of dementia as well. Although she wasn't, we found out in the end. We found out, what it was, but. Because she would call and tell me something, or she would text me, and it would be she would literally be asking me like one of the same questions that we had just talked about. Like when we were on the phone, we'd hang up, and then she'd call me back, and she'd say, "Hey, I know what I wanted to tell you," and she would start telling me, and it was the same thing she already told me minutes ago. But yet, when it comes to her remembering things from like when she was a kid growing up, she was like spot on and sharp with those memories. So at the same time, I could see what was happening. Um, Even though they kept telling me, like I said, she just has to try. She can get better. This isn't the end for her. And, she's got a lot more years that she can live. But she just has to do what we're telling her. And, yeah, mom was doing the best of her ability. So, ooh, April 4th of 2022, I was not up to see mom. She was in the hospital, and I didn't go up and see her because I was doing colonoscopy prep that day. And then the next day on April 5th, I went and had my colonoscopy. Due to anesthetic, I didn't take any chances, because mom was doing okay when I saw her on the 3rd. She was all right. And I spoke to my aunt because she went and saw her on the 5th. And said that, she seemed okay. She was alert. She was aware. Um, so, I wasn't really worried about not going up there on the 5th after I got home, from the colonoscopy. So I get a phone call after I got home from the colonoscopy, and they're telling me that they were wanting to put a feeding tube in mom. And mom was adamant. She has always been adamant her whole entire life. Do not put a feeding tube in me. Don't do it. Let me starve to death, she'd say. I don't want no damn feeding tube that they pour some liquid shit into, she would say. Um, and I mean, I get that. Um, so we determined that the only other option at that point to try to, because they were giving her all the nourishments they could by IV, and it just wasn't enough because she just wasn't eating, and they needed to get substantial food into her to help her keep getting better. Excuse me. Now, many times, Mom was taken to the hospital, like I said, with the CHF, and they would, oh my God, they would run like 4 diuretics on her at the same time um, to get the fluid off of her. And she would lose, oh my God, a good 50 to 75 pounds. I'm not kidding you, that much. Um, and oh, okay, the fact that so by the end of the phone call, I finally got her to agree to an NG tube. Well, I didn't know that they put them in when the patient is awake. Had I known that, I would have never suggested that. That would just drove Mom nuts, them trying to do that while she was awake. So that was the goal, and they were going to go ahead and put the NG tube in the very next morning, which was April 6th. So I get up bright and early, and I get myself up to the hospital. Um, I come I came off the elevator, and there were like 2 nurses standing right outside Mom's door, and they were charting and looking at things and talking about what they were charting, which it was stuff on Mom that they were charting. They were right there. They were like in the doorway of her room. And I said, "Is it okay to go in?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, definitely." So they kind of moved out of the way so I could go through and get into Mom's room. And I went in and I said, "Hey, Mama, what you doing?" She just sat there. She was kind of like sitting up. Her bed was just reclined a little bit, you know what I mean? Where she wasn't sitting straight up, but she went up a little bit. And she just looked at me and she didn't say anything. And she looked so lost. I did think we had moved to Minnesota to be safe from the I felt so bad for her. Minnesota was a housing state and that they wouldn't want to come there. Because when you looked into her eyes, was not the case at all. It wasn't her. It wasn't her. So I turn around and I look at the nurse and I said, "What's wrong with Mom?" I said, "She's, something's not right." I said, "She's just blank stare." Now, and mind you, through all this CHF crap, Mom had, like I said, numerous bouts of having to go and get fluid drained off of her. And when she would, her legs would be filled with so much fluid that they would start splitting and seeping, which is common with water retention like that, to that magnitude, and cellulitis. She would always end up with cellulitis in the legs because of that, because she had open areas that were just seeping and leaking all the time. So I said, Mom wasn't like this the other day, and I talked to her sister about her, being up here on the 4th, and she said that Mom was fine. And I said, I know she was pretty tired when I talked to her yesterday on the phone. Now, through all of this, my dad took her up a slice of birthday cake that was from my son's birthday on March 17th. And Mom didn't even realize or know that it was his birthday. Like, she used to constantly ask, "What day is it? What day of the week is it? And then what's the date?" And I would tell her, and she said, "If they would just write it on my board in here, I wouldn't have to ask you all the time." And I said, "Well, it's all right, Mom." I said, just call me when you need to know something." And I said, and she goes, "Yeah," she goes, "but I want to be able to see it." And, Mom was always kind of quirky with things like that. So it didn't really surprise me. So each time she would call, I would tell her what day of the week it was, and she like had this chronic confusion, and she would hallucinate. And she told me at one point that she saw her mother, my mom, and I said, "Oh no, Mom, that was probably a dream." And she said, "No, I was awake. She came here to see me." And I said, "Okay." And she said, I just want to go and be with her. And one of the last times that she was at home, I remember she sat on the side of her bed and she said, I'm dying, Kathy. And I said, no, you're not, Mom. This was before she got like real bad. And I said, no, you're not, Mom. I said, you're fine. I said, we just got to get you in the hospital because of your legs. We got to get you on an antibiotic. So, and that never left my mind, her saying it. She kept saying, I feel like my organs are shutting down. I'm dying. Everything's just stopping. And it hurts. It hurts so bad. And I said, I know, Mom. I said, let's finish getting you ready and we'll get you up to the hospital. So anyway, then we're going to fast forward back to April 5th again of 2022. Not April 5th, April 6th, sorry, of 2022. And um, when I said to the nurse what's going on with Mom, I noticed on her screen she had pictures up and was looking at them. And I saw one of them and I said to her, I said, is that Mom? And she said, yeah, yeah, that's your mom. And I said, oh my God. And she started flipping through the pictures and showing me everything. Um, when they would change the dressings on her legs, if I was up there, they would make me go out into the hall. And they would, and like, I didn't understand that, and I know Mom was scared and she wanted me there. And I looked at her and said, Mom, do you want me here? And she said, well, you can go. If I need to, I'll yell. And I said, okay. So I would go and stand outside the room until they opened the door and told me it was all good and I could come in. So that's how it went when I was there. And then, like, there were times that they came in and did the wound care and changed the dressings and the packings. Um, when I wasn't there, sometimes they would do it at night. Um, so the pictures, horrific. I'm not going to give any details out of respect for my mother. It was it was awful. I mean, things that you only see in movies. Um, it was bad. It was horrifying. It really was. Um, and I said to her, I said, she's having a lot of pain. Can you guys give her something? And she said, well, we're having a hard time keeping our blood pressure up, so we really can't give her much for pain right now. And I said, okay. I said, well, what's going on with her blood pressure? And it was very, very, very low. Um, the last time they were able to get a reading, it was like 32 over 21. Um, and they were giving her medicine to raise her blood pressure. But it wasn't really helping and doing anything. But because her blood pressure was that low, they couldn't give her anything because it would have killed her. So, as I mentioned before, Mom was always anti-feeding tube. She was also a DNR, comfort measures only. So I went in and I talked to her, and finally, just all of a sudden, she turned around and looked at me, turned her head and looked at me and said, when did you get here? I've been here a while already. So the nurse said that if she wanted pain medicine, they could basically turn her over to hospice care. So all that day, my dad was a truck driver. He happened to be like 2 towns up. Happened to be. I'll never understand how that happened. But anyway, so I called him, and he came in from the road and came up to the hospital. And after he's seen Mom for a little bit, I told him when I called him, he said, He said, "Oh my God, is she gone?" And I said, "No, not yet, Dad, but it's going to be today. So you need to get up here." Within an hour, he was there. Seen Mom for a little bit. And then he went to go get my brother. Now, my brother's really handicapped. He doesn't process those things well. But none of us do. um, so my brother didn't stay. He saw Mom for a little bit. And then another family member showed up and said that they would take him home. It was on the way for him getting home from my cousin. So he said he would take Chuck and drop him off. So, her brother never came to see her. They'd had issues here and there, disagreements, arguments, whatever. And made a really good connection with my dad and started that made him really want to come back. But still, I mean, that's your sister and she's dying. She's actively dying. It just didn't add up and make sense to me. Her one sister, she didn't come because she said she just couldn't bear to see her sister like that. She wanted to remember her as laughing, joking, smiling, just being happy-go-lucky. So after she got there, we just kind of sat with Mom for a while. She was real, what I'm looking for, restless. And she was, after getting the Ativan, Mom relaxed. And she never said anything else after that. At 20 after 8, they came in and gave her more morphine. Um, they stopped the pump that was administering the blood pressure medicine. Uh, at 8:30, she died. It was so hard to leave that hospital that night. So, I guess the purpose of this question, demand answers, demand explanations. So when I got the death certificate, I knew when she was admitted that last time and they put her straight in the ICU. I knew that she was sepsis at that point. The nurses were telling me what medication, because I always wanted to know what medication she's on, what is the dosage, how often, blah blah blah. And I noticed some of the antibiotics that she was telling me that mom was on were ones commonly used to treat sepsis. So I asked the nurse, I said, is she sepsis? And this was, like I said, before she died. She said, yeah. She said, but we're trying to get it under control. And I said, okay. And I said, well, do you think it will get under control, or what are we talking about here? And she said, oh yeah. She said, we're just waiting for her to respond to the treatment, and blah blah blah. And I said, oh, okay. So I get the death certificate. Ready for this? Mm-hmm. Septic shock is a primary cause of death. Secondary cause of death is a UTI, which I never knew she even had. No one ever said anything to me about a UTI. And I mean, I'm talking, I was like pain in the ass family member. I was up there every day at night, sometimes in the middle of the night when I was awake and just couldn't sleep. I would call up there and get a rundown from the nurse on how mom was doing that night. And other than the colonoscopy prep and the colonoscopy procedure, I was up there every single day because I wanted to know and I wanted to be with her and see what was going on. And she would, when she started with the hallucinations, she would tell me that my mom was there, or she would tell me that the monkeys were over there on the wall and they were jumping off the wall and coming after her. And she would, this. I'm like, Mom, what? And she said, you don't see those monkeys? And I said, what monkeys, Mom? And she said, they're trying to get me, and she would do that. And I'm like, Mom. And she'd turn around and look at me and she would say, there's no monkeys, are there? And I said, no, Mom, there's no monkeys. So at that point, she kind of knew that she was hallucinating. And and I mean, like when I talked to the nurses and doctors about it, they said that it was just because um, the sepsis, which is infection. And then I find out after the fact, of course, looking on Google, Google knows everything, about deaths due to a UTI. She would have had that UTI for the longest time for it to get bad enough and untreated at that, bad enough to turn to sepsis. Um, So anyway, yeah, my point is question, question, question. And when you have a family member, you know your family. You know what they will and won't do. And when it comes down to that, always believe the family. Always. If they're telling you that they're not coming in and getting them up or they're not doing physical therapy, you believe them. And, you know, I don't give a shit what any of the nursing homes say or any of the doctors or any of the nurses. They failed her miserably. They failed her. There's no reason she should have died. She was 67 years old. No reason. So that's kind of it. But anyway, I hope everyone's doing okay. Lots of tornadoes coming through our area lately. We had tornado warnings last night. So glad we didn't have any here. Um, but of course, areas close by to us had catastrophic damage to their homes. It was awful for those people. I feel so bad for them. But anyway, I hope everyone is well. I'll do another live. I don't know, later on down the road, a couple days, a week or so, who knows. But I'll do another live. Um, and yeah, I have a lot to say on that one too, because I'm going to talk about my dad's death, which was 5 months. 5 months. September 15th, 5 months after mom died. Is that a crock of shit? So anyway, I hope y'all are doing well. So, and until next time, be kind.